This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, hello there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe. And today we take a look at a birthday boy for February the 13th. Now, February 13th actually was hard for me to pick who the birthday boy would be. Obviously, it's this guy that you see on screen now, but there were others. I could have picked Matt Sundin because and talk about the first European to go number one overall in the NHL draft. That was back in 1989. And I could have went with Mike Krzyzewski, one of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time. However, because I did basketball with my birthday boy yesterday, being Bill Russell, and the fact that I'm doing a hockey themed on this day, obviously means that those two sports are disqualified. Thankfully, though, I found a football or another sport person, and that is Randy Moss. So, Randy Moss today turns 44 years old. It's February 13th. So, Randy Moss played 14 seasons in the NFL. He holds the NFL single season touchdown reception record, 23 in 2007. The single season touchdown reception record by a rookie, 17. And is second on the NFL all-time regular season touchdown catch list with 156. Behind, obviously, Jerry Rice. Basically, yeah. People forget that Randy Moss played for the University of Marshall, which wasn't really that big into IA or the FBS. The FBS, like NCAA football, the top division. Marshall was put in the Conference USA for a while, and then basically it was just like nobody could crush Marshall. So basically they put Marshall in the Conference USA and all that. But anyway, the Vikings drafted him in the first round of the 98 NFL draft, where he played for 7 years before they traded him to Oakland. But in 2007, Oakland traded him to New England for a 4th-round pick, and basically he had a renaissance. In 2010, the Patriots decided to trade Moss back to Minnesota, but he was waived and then claimed by the Titans. Moss signed a 1-year contract with the Niners in 2012 before retiring. He would play 2 Super Bowls, Super Bowl 42 with the Pats and Super Bowl 47 with the Niners. He was inducted to the Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2018. So basically, yeah. Moss's dream was to play for Notre Dame or even Ohio State. He had a letter of intent to play college football at Notre Dame. Unfortunately, Moss got in a racially charged fight for high school, and basically Notre Dame couldn't do it. They denied his enrollment application. He actually attended Florida State and all that. Unfortunately, when he was in the work release program after that fight with the guy in 95, Florida State waived him because he tested positive for marijuana. And Moss was transferred to Marshall. And he was allowed to transfer without losing eligibility because it's an IAA school and it's not the big time. But he helped Marshall do well and gained a lot of notoriety. Marshall won the IAA championship game and then moved up to IA. His junior and senior seasons were pretty good for Marshall. He and Chad Pennington were good offensive players. Marshall faced Ole Miss in the Ford Motor City Bowl because that's basically that Motor City Bowl is the champion of the MAC, the Mid-American Conference, facing someone else. So it faced Ole Miss. Moss and Pennington almost got Marshall the big win over Ole Miss, but they lost in the last second. He was a finalist for the 97 Heisman Trophy, finishing 4th behind Ryan Leaf, Peyton Manning, and Charles Woodson. So he played only 3 seasons. And all that. I guess he only played 1 season in IA with Marshall. I thought he played 2. Moss decided to enter the NFL draft and get skipped Marshall's senior season. Moss was projected to be high, but because of his behavior issues and that fight in that 3 years earlier, teams didn't really want to play him. The Cowboys wanted Moss, but Jerry Jones said that there was too many off-field incidents and all that. But anyway, Moss was angry that Dallas decided not to pick him. So he made an effort. Every time he would play in Dallas, he would burn Dallas on purpose. And he got a chance on Thanksgiving Day at Texas Stadium to do that. And he got 163 yards reception with 3 touchdowns. So Minnesota got him, and it wasn't that bad. In 98, he was just on fire, like helping the Vikings become the #1 rated offense ever at that time, setting the record for scoring until the 2007 Pats did it. Ironically, another team Moss played for. Basically, Moss was huge and all that. The Thanksgiving Day game. The Vikings only lost 1 game in their regular season. That was to Tampa Week 7, if memory serves me right. They were 15-1. They looked good. Then they faced the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC title game and lost in overtime, 30-27. Of course, that's a game where everyone remembers Gary Anderson missing that field goal that could have given the Vikings a 10-point lead with like 2 minutes left and almost guaranteed them the game. But the weird thing is that, how could Gary Anderson have missed that field goal indoors? If it was outdoors, fair enough, but it was indoors. He shanked it left. How the fuck can you do that? But a lot of people also forget that the Atlanta Falcons were no Cinderella team. They were 14-2 themselves. So basically, they were the most overrated, or underrated, however you call it, 14-2 team in the Super Bowl. So anyway, yeah, he was named Offensive Rookie of the Year. Why not? So basically, Moss would do very well for himself. He got an 8-year extension on his contract in 2001, which is good. So basically, Moss was a good player. In 2003, Moss would have a good season. He was the second wide receiver in NFL history, behind Jerry Rice in 95, to play more than 12 games while averaging more than 100 yards and a touchdown per contest. AKA, he got 1,632 yards and 17 touchdowns. Of course, there's 16 games. The Vikings looked good and all that. They were 6-0 to start the year, but that was the year they utterly collapsed, especially that 4th and 26 play or whatever it was. 4th and 23, I think. I can't remember the yardage, but Arizona, on the final day of the year, Arizona actually played for the win, despite the fact that they could have tanked and got the #1 overall pick. But Arizona decided to beat Minnesota and help Green Bay out. And then, of course, it was Nate Poole with that catch for the touchdown to sink the Vikings, get the Packers in division title and the playoff spot, which subsequently they end up, I believe, was that the year they lost to Atlanta at Lambeau Field, which was just shock? Or was that Hasselbeck? I think that was Hasselbeck. Oh, yeah, it was Hasselbeck because that was the year before I moved to Kitchener. So, yeah, that was huge. Moss did pretty well. Unfortunately, in 2004, he started getting 8 touchdown catches in 5 games, but sadly, he had a hamstring injury. And then, of course, he made a controversial move. When the Vikings, that was Packers and Falcons, because the Vikings took on the Packers in the 04-05 season. Okay. Vikings played the Packers in the wildcard game. Minnesota won 31-17 at Lambeau. 4 catches, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Moss decided to trot to the end zone goalpost and faked pulling down his pants to moon the Green Bay fans, because Green Bay fans would moon him after games. Joe Buck called it a disgusting act, and he was criticized. I mean, he faked pulling down his pants. But Green Bay fans have a tradition of mooning the bus of the departing team. Moss was fined $10,000, and when they talked to him about it, he said, "How did you pay?" "Straight cash, homie." Moss would end up being traded in March of 2005 for Napoleon Harris and the Raiders' first-round pick, which was 7th overall, which Minnesota got Troy Williamson, and also the 7th-round pick. Oakland was really happy to see him, but Moss got nagging injuries. He did get 1,000 receiving yards in his first year, but not his second year, only 553 yards. He was not happy in Oakland. He didn't like losing all that. The Raiders were going to make a trade to get rid of Randy Moss. Lane Kiffin wanted to trade him to Denver. But the Packers and Patriots were the two teams most interested. It was kind of weird how the Packers would do that. But the Packers lost out. The Patriots decided to make the trade. They made a trade that sent Randy Moss to New England for a 4th-round pick. And the Raiders selected John Bowie. Why don't I remember what happened to that guy? But anyway, one of the conditions of the trade was that Moss had to restructure his contract for salary cap reasons. And Moss said that's fine. And Moss just went off on a limb. He got 23 touchdown catches, the most in NFL history, as I said. The funny thing about the previous record was Jerry Rice's 22 was in the 87 season when they basically had the strike in the middle of the season and basically its gaps played 3 weeks. So Rice could have broken that. Of course, when Moss did that one, Brady got his 50th touchdown pass. That set the record. Moss recorded 98 catches for 1,493 yards. And he did pretty well. Unfortunately, though, he ended up being very quiet in the playoffs, and the Giants beat the Pats on the final minutes of the Super Bowl. Moss was a free agent, as the Patriots didn't want to put a franchise tag on him. Dallas, Philly, and Green Bay wanted Moss, but he decided to sign back with New England. 3 years, $27 million. That's not bad. Oz did okay. 11 touchdown catches, despite the fact that Tom Brady went down in the first game of the season. Moss looked very good. He got another 13 touchdown catches to lead the league in the 2009 season. The 2010 season, Moss didn't think he could play with the Pats. So basically, he thought he was done for it. So he basically had nothing. After a Week 4 game against the Dolphins, the Pats decided to trade him back to Minnesota for the 3rd-round pick in the 2011 NFL Draft. The Pats made good on it in picking my boy from Arkansas, Ryan Mallett. But unfortunately, Mallett was traded away because he was tired of sitting behind Brady. Unfortunately, Moss criticized his teammates in a press conference when the Vikings lost to the Pats at Gillette Stadium. Basically, Moss said that Childress should be fired. But Moss was waived. Childress did get fired on November 22nd. Moss was cleared off waivers by the Titans. And Moss decided to retire after a bad season. However, San Francisco decided to take a chance on him. And he actually did decent. He did play in Super Bowl 47 against the Ravens, which was nice, but he only had 2 receptions for 41 yards. So he played 218 games in his NFL career, got over 15,000 receiving yards, 156 touchdowns, and yeah. NFL records. Touchdown catches in a year, 23 in 07. Touchdown catches by a rookie, 17 in 98. All seasons with 17 or more touchdown receptions, touchdown catches, 3. All seasons with 10 or more touchdown catches, 9, tied with Rice. Most yards receiving in the Pro Bowl, 212 in 2000, pardon. He was the youngest player to get his 100th and 120th receiving touchdown, and the fastest player to get to 5,000 career receiving yards, 59. So yeah, 6-time Pro Bowler, second on the touchdown catch listed for the Vikings. Chris Carter's number 1. Yeah, a lot of people did that. 4th all time in receiving yards. So yeah, basically he does some charity stuff and that's nice. Moss has 5 children, and his son Thaddeus actually played for LSU in their 2020 championship season and was signed by Washington as an undrafted free agent. That's not bad. But of course, Moss had a lot of problems, including marijuana use and all that. But still, when he was good, he was good. When he was awful, he was really awful. Sorry, but that's the way it is. I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.